Hey, my name is Rudi Rennkamel. I've played over 50 hours in Jurassic World Evolution 3. I built a Halo ring, a Raptor kitchen, and I've also well over 5,000 hours in the Planet games, as well as over 1,000 hours in the Jurassic World Evolution games, 1 and 2 that is. Now, here's my review of the latest installment in the Jurassic World Evolution series. I will go through a couple of points that will hopefully help you decide whether this game is for you, or if you may wait a little bit until the game receives a couple updates in the future to become a much better game, just as Jurassic World Evolution 2 became at the end of its lifespan. So, in order to give you a good idea what we are doing, we are going through the list like follows. We are first of all talking about the gameplay, because that's a relatively quick one. Then we talk about creative tools. We do also talk about typical Frontier. I'll get to that when we have this point, actually. Then we talk about the big win and the big loss. And we talk about a couple of typical mentions we have to do in a review like that. Let's begin with the gameplay. Well, what shall I say? There is not really that much to take upon, because we do have pretty much the similar formula that has been established in the first and second installment of the game. It pretty much follows the same logic: build a park, build facilities, automate after a while, and so on and so forth. Is there anything bad to mention about this? Well, I guess if you are in for a super complicated, very hard to master game, this may be not the game for you in the first place, and I don't need to really continue going. If you are familiar with Frontier as a studio, you know they are not known for the most hardest and crazy management games out there, which is fine because it still is a pretty long campaign with as I think, the best, campaign that they have produced for the Jurassic World Evolution games. They have really done a great job in the first game, including the updates, but they have, I think the second game, the biggest issue of the second game was a bit the close relation to the movies, and now with the third game, as Frontier has been let loose a little bit, you can really tell that they have produced an awesome, really nice campaign, which is also pretty long indeed. So if you want to play that, it's by far the longest of all of them, without any DLC, and maybe in the future it's going to be enlarged by that as well. So is it a major leap forward? Well, I don't think so. I personally think the best part of it is the introduction of the maintenance team. Yes, it is another team. It doesn't really add too much complexity to it, but it does add another layer of automation, which specifically when you build bigger parks and you want to reach these 5 stars, it just kind of helps you to get rid of these annoying fixes and maintenance and, kind of update the feeders, update the fuel and so on, which is a nice micromanagement at the beginning to really give you the power of micromanagement and, save some money. But as you have enough money income, maybe other things are the issue: security or guest flow, or more guests in the park, or star rating. You don't want to bother with these things anymore, which I think the maintenance team is the perfect solution for. So that's a big plus for my side, and it still has the same kind of caveats of the old games. So if you didn't like the way how the habitat, for example, works, as in how the viewing is counted and how the habitat should be built to count as a high star rating, well, again, technically it is kind of the same. Also, the creative tools of the piece by piece building don't really add anything to it, other than a little bit of a park rating to it, but that's about it, So from a management side of things, I can't really say any big negative, because it's essentially the same with a couple of nice introductions and a couple of nice improvements. Other than that, it's a pretty steady campaign. It's a pretty steady challenge mode if you want to. So all in all, if you like the other games, you definitely will like this one too, and it definitely gives the best campaign out there. So now let's talk about potentially the biggest leap forward in this game, which is obviously the introduction of a huge amount of creative tools. And by that, obviously, a lot of people will now scream piece by piece building. We as Planet players, and I say that the whole community in the Planet games, whether it's been Planet Coaster or Planet Zoo, already knew about the power of these tools. And it's funny seeing the creative community in the Jurassic franchise now going nuts about this too, while we've been enjoying that for a couple of years. But there are also a lot of voices against piece by piece that thought that this complexity may be a little bit too much for the game and doesn't really do anything to the game. I don't think so, because it's essentially an optional feature. If you don't want to build with piece by piece, you can already download from more than 1,000 creations, well over 1,000 creations, after literally only a couple days on the workshop. A lot of beautiful creations. There are way too many to mention them, but they're really nicely done. And you have a huge versatility. It adds a lot to the game. It adds a lot of the versatility to the game and variety. Now, you are not prone to using the same hatchery looking like maybe 3 different styles. after all the time. Now you have a bajillion different styles of hatcheries in your park or viewing galleries or whatnot. So in that sense, even if you don't want to use the system yourself, you will still have the benefit from profiting from a lot more versatility in the blueprints available to you right in game. And Frontier fixed a huge issue of the Planet games where it was a lot more complicated to get the right blueprints from Steam Workshop and so on. Now it being embedded right into the game and having your blueprints right at hand at the space where you need that. You know, you click on hatchery, you have only hatchery blueprints. You click on restaurant, you only have restaurant blueprints. That is fantastic, and I think it's a wonderful way to really go forward in this franchise, because with every DLC you now have the option to bring a new style, to bring a new blueprints, and people have a lot more variety in their builds, which is pretty damn cool. But also, we don't end there. You know, Frontier has also given us a lot more control over terrain building and terraforming or whatnot. So the terrain tools are as best as they could get them with the underlying system. To give you a bit of a background, the Planet games have a full voxel-based landscaping tool, which means it's a 3D landscape surface, which can essentially also create terrain out of nowhere, so you can have floating islands and whatnot. But in the Jurassic games, from its core of the game, it's a 2D flat height map, if you will, which is also what caused the kind of limitations in the previous game. So essentially what that does is you can never go above a slope of 90 degrees. So technically it's never 90 degrees, it's like 89.999 degrees, because what you're doing, you have to imagine that as a blanket lying flat on the ground, and you take your fingers and you pinpoint one little area and you pull that up. You'll never be able to just kind of create an overhang with that without ripping apart the whole blanket. As long as you want to make the blanket appear in the same spot, you can only pull it up and down. But in that limitation, Frontier did the best possible and gave us a lot of amazing tools, including waterfall feature, different types of water, deep water, which is very nice to mention. Also, if you noticed, I haven't talked about deep water in the management aspect of the game, simply because I think it's not that big of a change. So I must say that this is definitely a nice to have feature. You can now do natural barriers, and deep water essentially is natural barrier by having those animals who cannot swim or wade through deep water. They have a natural barrier by deep water which they cannot pass, which is a good thing. Is it revolutionary? Of course it's not, but it doesn't add that much to a gameplay. It does really do a lot more for the creative players out there, including having a couple of dinosaurs who will actually swim, which again is a very nice creative feature and makes the game as a park builder game much better. Alright, but that brings me directly to the typical Frontier kind of thing. See, I love Frontier. I've been working with this studio for almost 8 years, almost a decade I should say, with all the previous talks and whatnot. I love them. They are fantastic people, super passionate, but they always have the same kind of typical Frontier style oopsies in a game. And where do I start? See, we have all these creative tools, amazing creative tools, and then the pathing has not really been touched. Like, yeah, sure, we got a couple more variants in terms of colors and patterns, but that's about it. Like, there is no staircase, there is no tunnels, there's no bridges, there's no anything. And this is like, hey, come on, you give us all the power of piece by piece, but then you don't give us the power of connecting these things. Like, you have this amazing island generator I want to mention. It's a good thing to have that back. Very nice, very versatile, but then you only have it in a tropical map. Then you have a island generator which creates different like archipelagos, like little different islands, and the only way to connect the islands with each other is like via monorail or hyperloop or zipline adventure, which works fine, I guess, but only in one direction. So you gotta build a zipline adventure in the other direction as well. Fine, okay. But see, the point is, it's like, it's so obvious that you have all these tools and then so obvious to not have them. It's like, why would you? The other thing is, the interface is nice. I really like the way how they have introduced the piece by piece building. But then they made it so complicated to build with it, because they have menu after menu after menu. You need to confirm and confirm and confirm, which, why would you change the already existing system in the Planet games, which has been, due to players' feedback, perfectionized after years and years of experience? Why don't you just take the same system and bring that over? Now you have a lot of double confirms in a process which doesn't even need to confirm. So one example is, if I'm editing in a group, why would I need to confirm a selection within a group when I just want to select it. I mean, I can still just click the right mouse button or on console B or X or whatever to just go back, you know, and deselect my selection. But that is like so many unnecessary clicks in between. And then the biggest of all of them is them, why on earth would I need to have two different buttons for select the advanced move and use the advanced move, which currently in the base settings is like R and F. You can set that back to the legacy, which is like X then, but in the Planet games, it's always been just X, you know? Just click X on your keyboard and you're in the advanced move, and you can also toggle all the different things. And it goes on. In the Planet games, we have all these primitive art shapes as well, and they can scale from 0.1 to 3x of size. In Jurassic World Evolution, for whatever reason, we have a scale limit from 0.5 to 2, which specifically in a game which deals with a lot bigger animals, a lot bigger structures. Like, we legit have animals that are as big as the highest peak of a roller coaster in Germany or whatnot. So why on earth, that's a joke, by the way, I know that dinosaurs aren't that big, but okay. I mean, technically, if you look at the latest Jurassic World movie, it kind of, anyways. The thing is, there are so many little things again, which I'm sure Frontier will fix. I'm sure they will fix it upon player feedback, but why on earth would you not do that if all the experience you have already from the other games? It's a couple of oopsies, and I'm like, it should have been fixed, but all the other things, I can tell you from the Planet Coaster 2 launch, there's a lot they nailed with the beginning of the game, and I'm so thankful for that. So that's just a couple of little things you can get around, but I'm hoping, I have already written them a huge email weeks ago after the early access. They have received that, they have confirmed that they're looking into that, so hopefully there will be a fix rather soon. All right, let's talk about the big win. I mean, you may potentially watch this video and like, hey, what the hell? You're talking about big wins the whole time. Well, technically I did, but I said that specifically of the gameplay didn't really change that much. But we have one big element to the game that has been brought in. It is breeding and juvenile animals. Now, it doesn't seem like that big of a thing because relatively quickly the story is told. You have nests, you have different types of breeding programs. You can get animals as babies. They do take over certain treats from their parents and then even like kind of skin and whatever, which is super good, but again, it's a relatively quickly told story. However, I personally think it is much, much bigger than you would think it is, because it does not only add the ability to have finally male and female variants in the game. I mean, people have said, you know, we've almost only the same amount of animals, if not less than in the previous game. That is true, but you have to think about this way. We now have every single dinosaur coming with 3 different variants as being a juvenile and a male version, whereas previous game dinosaurs would always be female, except some exceptions like the raptor, for example, the Indoraptor, there we have it. My brain was just all over the place here. The Indoraptor obviously was an execution to that one, but then again, that is just because of the way it has been kind of created in the movies. But now we have a lot of variants. They also differ in their body posture and body form, which is great, but also in size and variants to it. So that adds a whole lot of variety to the game, but it also adds way more park building abilities, and I think this is where I will get to a bit more in the conclusion of the game. But the park building is more than ever the kind of core element of the game, whereas the second game, Jurassic World Evolution 2, it did a lot of things wrong at the beginning of the game. It took out all the creative tools we have kind of gained over the course of Jurassic World Evolution 1. It was strictly tied to the movies in a way and tried to bring in a storytelling where it didn't fit. But at the end of the day, what people want is to basically have a modern day Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. That is what people want in the first place from this game. And this is, on many levels, the closest we ever gotten to that, and maybe even beyond, because let's be real, you can do a lot more than in Operation Genesis. We've gotten a lot of tremendously great new rides. We have got more kind of focus on the park building by all the creative tools I mentioned. We have a couple new management elements that do help, but, well, you know, a couple of other things that didn't. So I think the introduction of breeding is not only that we have breeding and babies in, it is basically unlocking the door to a proper park building game. Whereas the previous 2 Jurassic World Evolution games felt more like a story-driven, movie-driven park-ish builder, but this is a proper zoo builder. It's basically a prehistoric, a Jurassic zoo builder, if you want. It's Planet Jurassic, essentially. And for those who like that, it is absolutely amazing. And again, it's so cool to see how people now get into the family of the piece-by-piece building and, you know, all that kind of power we have unleashed in here. I'm personally very happy about this. Now, let's talk about the big L. All right, the big L. Do I really need to mention that? You've seen that everywhere, I guess, right? The complexity meter on consoles and the console performance. Oh, see, I'm split on that one, but it has to be mentioned. I cannot take myself as an example and just sculpt it over everyone else, because that's not fair, you know? There are a lot of people who want to enjoy the game on console, and it's been the same discussion on Planet Zoo console and Planet Coaster console and Planet Coaster 2 console. The consoles are limited in what they can do, and the idea of the Planet games with the offer of having unlimited power in piece-by-piece building comes with a huge issue of performance. It's always been the case, and if you look at the biggest and bestest parks in all the other Planet games, they literally will melt all of your computers. There's legit no big project that ends up with a 60 FPS on any system in the world. It is just the way how these games function, okay? They are super intensive on the hardware because of all the calculations been done for piece by piece, and if you add a lot of animals to the calculation, it's going to be problematic. And if you put that on a console, which is essentially just a couple of years old PC with decent hardware, but still a couple of years old, it'll end up being a compromise. But it always depends on how you enter the compromise. And I think if there is a range from here to here, I gotta figure that in the camera, you could have ended here, which is the optimum, but Frontier started here now. So we have to bring this one really close to here to make people happy. I think everyone playing on console has to understand that you will never be able to compete with the parks that, you know, high-end modern day computers with 50 series graphics and the latest processors from Intel and AMD. You will not be able to compete with them. But it should be possible to at least run like 80% of the stuff that is going to go to the workshop. You should be able to play the game for a longer period of time for a decent FPS. This should be an offer, has to be done. And as I figured from feedback and what I've looked into in forums and so on, it seems not to be the case at the moment. So it is a technical issue, it's not a game issue. The game itself is not the problem, but the technical limitation is, and it has to be mentioned for a review. So if you're on console, there are a couple of things I want to mention. So if you have a PC as well, I would definitely recommend get this game on PC instead. I still believe it's more of a PC game anyways, but that's my personal preference. You can also very well play it with controller. They have a very good adaptation for the controller players. That's a big thumbs up at this point, by the way. But at the end, there is this huge issue of complexity meter, so maybe you wait. Frontier is actively looking into that. They have also let us creators known already a bit earlier, before this all kind of cooked up a little bit. They are already looking into that. They have a good idea to do that, but you also have to keep in mind, it's not only them, it's also kind of Sony and PlayStation having a word in that, because they want to maintain a stable FPS, for example. And see, there is a little bit of things you have to debate, but again, if I would recommend that on console, if you want to be very creative and build giant parks, maybe wait a second. If you're just in for the campaign and building a little bit, all good. You can go ahead, maybe not on the weakest of the consoles, but on all the other versions, you can go and have a good go on it. And also, I want to just mention that real quick, playing on console is still decently fun also when it comes to building. So I think that's not really a big barrier here. What is a barrier though, as I said, is the huge constraints with the complexity meter. And if you will, this is such a big impact on the console players that I very well understand if you want to wait for a lot longer, I guess. So yeah, but anyways, let's go into the last chapter before we draw a conclusion. I named this further mentions, but anyways, this is just for me like a free space to mention everything else that doesn't really fit into a specific topic. So I think, again, if you are a creative builder, if you love the Planet games, but you also have a heart for dinosaurs, that's your game. There's no real big issue to recommend this game for you, because you will essentially find a new sandbox with a lot more maps, with a lot more biomes, with great weather, and so on. But then again, we have to go through a list of, again, I could have put this into typical Frontier, but I needed to talk about all the other stuff first so you understand. So we got breeding, we got all the stuff, but then again, in the nesting and so on, there is that tiny little bit of, you could have gone that step further and bring in a bit more of difference in nurturing. And I mean, they have different desires, but are they really that different? I guess they're not. So could have been a bit more nicer to really give breeding programs that you have to put them in different enclosures and just put a bit more gameplay around the idea of juveniles, or maybe you have to separate different adults from each other to not fight and then have a proper breeding program. There would have been options, but also adding all these rides and stuff is fine, but again, you know, you don't have really that much new for the guests. And one big issue I still have with the game, you give all the ability of the piece by piece building, you can make super nice natural barriers, but still people cannot actively watch a habitat from the outside. You have to build a facility that has the viewing opportunity to it. So let's say you build a habitat and you only put a lake around, you only put like a river around of deep water, and you throw in dinosaurs in the central island that cannot go through deep water. Technically, everyone outside of that river should be able to see the animals, but as long as you don't put a viewing gallery down or a dome viewing or whatever, these dinosaurs will basically invisible to the rest of the world, which is again so weird, because why would you? Now we could have again, and if so, just give us an invisible viewing gallery that you can put anywhere and just pretend that this is a viewing spot. If you don't want to have another layer of, you know, performance issue, if every single person would have its own personal viewing, so to say, which is how the Planet games work, by the way. So in Planet Zoo, every single guest has its own kind of POV, which is affected by, you know, pieces. But if they have a clear view, that is where they can see the animals. And so that is defining how visible animals are, which is a very good system, but it also is very consuming on the hardware. So I do understand that these viewing galleries are a lot more simple on hardware, and specifically when you have issues, you may not want to add more complexity to it, but you can still give us like this invisible one and put it in and just have that view. So a lot of tiny little issues here and there. But there is also a bit more I want to say about the guests. You know, guests still feel a little lifeless, despite the fact I like the idea of having people spawn on benches and picnic tables. It gives you the ability to put them anywhere. It just, again, is a workaround of the fact that we don't have bridges and staircases and stuff, because they already knew you'll not be able to bring people onto a terrace. So what they do is they spawn them on these benches and stuff to pretend they are there, which is fine, I guess, but it also doesn't really add that much of liveliness to your area. So you don't have the activity of sitting down on a bench and getting up again, because simply they spawn there. So I would really love to see a bit more love for the people and guests in the future. But, you know, I could go on, but these are the most important ones. Let's go to a little bit of a conclusion, shall we? Alrighty, so conclusion time. I'll try to make it relatively crisp and short, because I've basically touched upon everything. Are you someone who wants to really go deep into management and try every single thing on the highest difficulty and be challenged for a long time? That game may be not the perfect solution for you. It's more like an annoying thing if you've got too many storms and stuff, but it's not like the hard skill ability. It really is just about having fun playing a Jurassic Park game or Jurassic World game, and it has a very long, good campaign. So if you're just in for some fun and more casual management and campaign play, very nice, very much recommendable. If you are, however, a fan of the classic JPOC game and you just want to build the Jurassic Park or the Jurassic World of your dreams, you want to build a prehistoric park, you want to build a different style of Jurassic Park, if you want to build a Jurassic Park on the moon, who would even do that? Anyways, if you want, you can, this is it. You can now have a really great game that offers you the ability to build your Jurassic Park of your dreams. You can literally do a one-by-one recreation of Jurassic Park or Jurassic World if you want to. You can even build, I've seen people doing San Diego, I've seen people doing all the kind of builds from Jurassic World, The Lost World, Jurassic Park, oh my god, Jurassic Park, The Lost World, there you go. But see, you can do everything. If you are a JPOC fan and you want to have a modern JPOC, that's the game that comes closest to it, because of course there's another wonderful game like Prehistoric Kingdom, but it doesn't offer that much gameplay, and also it's more onto the paleonto accuracy route kind of thing. Which, again, if you want that, maybe this game is not the perfect one for you, because they have to be in line with the IP, with the franchise of Jurassic Park / Jurassic World, which ends up having certain design decisions that go more in line with this franchise look. So we don't have an accurate Velociraptor, of course, but we then have a more accurate Deinonychus. So they have already tried to be a bit more in line where they could, where they have animals that are not featured as much in the movies, but again, they still have to be in line. So if you are a fan of the franchise and you want to build a Jurassic Park, this is the absolute best game you can imagine. Again, if you are on console, maybe you wait a second, because things have to be fixed out and, you know, have to be finally made playable, I guess, at the end of the day. That would be it. But overall, it is, in my opinion, by far the best installment of the Jurassic Park games or the Jurassic World games that Frontier has produced. It's by far the best at launch. It's no comparison to Jurassic World Evolution 2 at launch. It offers so much more. It's so much more stable. It's so much more complete in a way. So does it earn the justification of a third installment relatively shortly after the second? I think absolutely. I think they have way more than enough added to the game to justify that step. And I think, frankly, it's just a very good game at the end of the day. If you're not on console, again, that has to be said. So, what do you think? Do you agree with what I've said? Do you not agree? I don't care. I'm just kidding. I do care. This is why I've read into all the console stuff and so on, because frankly, I could say I don't care because I don't even own one. But no, it's important to really give you the perspective on anything. So make sure to be polite. Let's discuss in the comments what's your opinion, what's lacking, what would you love to see in the future, because surely we're getting DLCs and updates, and we all know we get more free dinosaurs from Jurassic World Evolution 2. So the base roster of that game will be added for free back into the game, so lots coming. So yeah, let me know. I am curious to hear from you guys, and until then, have a wonderful time. Make sure to subscribe if you want to have more content like this, like Jurassic World Evolution 3, like Planet Zoo, Planet Coaster. Make sure to stay with me. I talk to you, as always, in the next one. Thank you. Bye.